the Senator Godswill Akpabio leadership of this Senate, and in also thanking the entire senators for the ways they have handled this matter. I thank you, and I so move.
The Minority Leader.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Very distinguished colleagues. Having listened very carefully to the presentation of a very able, dynamic, and erudite Senate leader, I'm convinced to want to support unequivocally the motion moved by the Senate leader. Having explained to the whole world that the deliberation of this Senate was based on the matter that happened in this chamber on the 5th of February, and that we are guided by our rules, I therefore moved that I second the motion on vote of confidence on this President of the Senate, Senator Godswill Akpabio, of the capacity and capability, because it's leading us well. I so second.
Well, distinguished colleagues, the leader has moved a motion and seconded by the minority leader. I will put that to vote because what the leader did was to give an account of what happened in the past 2 weeks and to draw the attention of the entire Senate that what is before us is a need to partner with the president to deal with what we've been doing in order to bring prosperity to our nation. That we should pull any other thing aside and get focused so that we'll do the best in partnership with the president in bringing prosperity to our country. That there's no point talking about an issue that has been dealt with by the Senate. It has been dealt with, it's been lying with our system, and that we should do away with that. Since the matter is before the court of law, we should allow the court to decide, and therefore not to get distracted and get focused. The budget has just been passed. We need to start looking at the budget and make sure that it's fully implemented for the benefit of our people. This is what he's saying. As a leader of the Senate, he just wants us to be on track, not to get distracted, to be focused. In fact, I saw the breakdown of the budget. The budget booklets have been brought to be distributed to senators. So our attention should be there on what to do to our people. This matter is before court of law, and we shall allow the court to deal with the matter. In fact, Section 40 of our rule is clear about that. If a matter is before court of law, we shall allow the court to take care of it. The judiciary now to play its role so that whatever comes out of it is what we are going to work on. So in this respect, I want to put the motion to vote. Those in favor of the motion moved by the Senate leader and seconded by the minority leader, please say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. Leader, we can continue.
Thank you, Mr. President, and very distinguished colleagues, senators of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. The fourth business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in my name on the Federal College of Nursing and Midwifery Ikosu Moba, Ekiti State, Establishment Bill 2025. It is a House bill for concurrence, HB 782. And Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
Clerk of the Senate. Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Federal College of Nursing and Midwifery, Ikosu, Moba Ekiti State Establishment Bill 2025, HB 782, first reading.
Federal College of Nursing and Midwifery, Ikoso Moba, Ekiti State, Establishment Bill 2025, HB 782, first reading taken. The leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the second business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of most distinguished Senator Jibril Issa on the National Cashew Production and Research Institute, IDA, Kogi State, Establishment Bill 2025, SB 565. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
The Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, National Cashew Production and Research Institute, IDA Kogi State Establishment Bill 2025, SB 565, first reading.
National Cashew Production and Research Institute, IDA Kogi State Establishment Bill 2025, SB 565, first reading taken. The leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the third business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of most distinguished Senator Mwemboin Onyeka Peter on the Federal Universities of Agriculture Act Amendment Bill 2025, SB 745. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
The Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Federal Universities of Agriculture Act Amendment Bill 2025, SB 745, first reading.
Federal Universities of Agriculture Act Amendment Bill 2025, SB 745, first reading taken. The leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the fourth business of the day is the presentation of a bill standing in the name of most distinguished Senator Umar Sadiq Sulaiman on the Institute of Border Studies, Kosu Bosu Baruten, Kwara State, Establishment Bill 2025, SB 746. Mr. President, you may wish to invite the Clerk of the Senate to read the short title of the bill.
The Clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, Institute of Border Studies, Kusubusu, Buroted, Kwara State Establishment Bill 2025, SB 746, first reading.
Institute of Border Studies, Kusubusu, Baruten, Kwara State Establishment Bill 2025, SB 746, first reading taken. The leader of the Senate.
Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, the first order of the day is the second reading of the Electoral Act 2022 Amendment Bill 2025, SB 412. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read for the first time in this chamber on Wednesday, 15th May 2024. Mr. President, you may wish to invite most distinguished Senator Yar Adua Abdul Aziz Musa to move the motion for the bill to be read a second time.
Senator Abdulaziz Yaradua, the floor is yielded to you to move your motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, I remain Abdulaziz Musa Yaradua, representing the good people of Katsina Central. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, permit me to lead the debate on this critical bill that seeks to enfranchise a
Move the motion
significant group of
fast.
Nigerians.
Move the motion. You move the motion, you may not need a seconder before you start reading your something. You move the motion fast.
Thank you, Mr. President. Correction. I wish to move a motion for the second reading of the bill on Electoral Act Amendment for early voting bill. I so move.
Okay, you can now continue.
Thank you, Mr. President. Permit me to lead the debate on this critical bill that seeks to enfranchise a significant group of Nigerians who, due to the nature of their duties on election days, are denied the opportunity to exercise their most fundamental democratic right, the right to vote. This very important bill that seeks to introduce early voting in the Electoral Act 2022 was read for the first time on Wednesday, the 15th day of May, 2024. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, in any democratic process, equal opportunity must be given to all citizens that participate in elections, regardless of their gender, ethnicity, religion, occupation, or socioeconomic status. This ensures the true reflection of the will of the people, thereby enhancing the stability of the democratic process. Unfortunately, a huge number of Nigerians who are involved in making Nigeria's election a success are excluded from the crucial decision-making of choosing their leaders through the ballot. Over 1 million citizens who play critical roles in ensuring the smooth conduct of the elections are disenfranchised. These include INEC officials, ad hoc staff, the security personnel, including the police, the military, and other security personnel, journalists, observers, and others who work on election day to uphold the integrity of the process are effectively denied their rights to vote. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, this exclusion has characterized all elections in the Fourth Republic and became more alarming in the 2023 general elections, with over 1 million ad hoc staff, 310,973 police personnel, 93,495 military and Department of State Service personnel, 51,000 personnel from the National Security and Civil Defense Corps, 21,000 from the Federal Road Safety Corps, 11,336 from the Nigerian Correctional Service, 9,447 from the National Drugs Law Enforcement Agency, and 350 personnel from the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission who were actively engaged in election activities were disenfranchised. Similarly, the Independent National Electoral Commission reported that 144,800 observers were deployed by 196 national and domestic organizations, with the implication that those citizens were also unable to vote. This is in addition to journalists and others involved in elections in various capacities. The number of those excluded from voting could change the outcomes of election results. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, the figures highlighted above makes this bill a necessity to address the disenfranchisement of eligible voters. As lawmakers, it is our duty to ensure that every Nigerian citizen, regardless of their profession or duty on election day, has the opportunity to participate fully in the electoral process. Let me emphasize that early voting has been part of the electoral legal frameworks in other jurisdictions, with its attendant huge success stories in promoting voter participation, reducing election day pressure, and increasing accessibility. In the United States, early voting varies by states, with some states allowing a few days to several weeks, up to 45 days in advance of election day. In Australia, early voting starts about 2 to 3 weeks before the election. In Canada, early voting takes place 12 days before election day, allowing voters greater flexibility. In Germany, postal voting is initiated 4 to 6 weeks before election, enabling voters to participate ahead of time. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, early voting has also gained traction in several African countries. In South Africa, the Independent Electoral Commission allows early voting 2 days before the general election for individuals such as the elderly, disabled, pregnant women, security forces, and those working on election day. In Namibia, diplomats and election officials cast their votes a week before election day. In Ghana, early voting commences 4 days before the general election for eligible voters such as security personnel and individuals with disability. In Senegal, the Electoral Commission allows early voting few days or a week before election, depending on the circumstances. From the foregoing, countries that have adopted early voting in their electoral process tend to have higher voter turnout rate. For instance, in Ghana, 79% of voter turnout was recorded in 2020. This was also the case with voter turnout in Sierra Leone, with 84% turnout in 2018, Liberia with 75% turnout in 2017, and Senegal with 66.23% turnout in 2019. In contrast, Nigeria's voter turnout have dropped in the last 3 election cycles, from 43.7% in 2015 to 34.7% in 2019 and to 27.1% in 2023. It is therefore necessary for Nigeria to adopt early voting to enhance voter turnout, inclusivity, and electoral efficiency. In conclusion, Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, this bill seeks to improve Nigeria's electoral system, aligning it with international best practices. By this bill, Nigeria can establish a more inclusive, efficient, and secure electoral process. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, the introduction of early voting is not just about convenience. It is about strengthening our democracy, improving voter participation, reducing electoral violence, and making elections more efficient and transparent. By passing this bill, we'll be taking a significant step towards a more inclusive and representative electoral system that better serves the interests of all Nigerians. I urge you all to support this bill as it moves through the legislative process. Thank you for your attention. I so submit.
The floor is either to the Chief Whip, then Senator Jimo O'Brien, then Senator Garo Medoki.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, my name is Mohamed Tahir Monguno. I represent Borno North Senatorial District. I think this bill is one of the most progressive bill that the 10th Senate is going to attend to. I'm saying so against the backdrop of the fact that as a democratic parliament, we should always make sure that no Nigerian is disenfranchised from performing his or her civic responsibility of voting for candidates of their choice. Because it is only through imbibing and enthroning this democratic culture that will ensure the emergence of a credible, transparent, and leadership that is accountable and responsible to the yearnings and aspirations of the people, because they know that they owe or they are holding this office in trust for the people as a result of the free and fair election that they were voted into that office. So as a result of that, what this bill seeks to do is to ensure that those Nigerians that as a result of the circumstances that they found themselves working as a security man in order to guarantee the peaceful conduct of the elections, or working as a journalist to cover the elections, to report how the elections were transparent, are mostly disenfranchised as a result of the nature of the work they are doing. So what this bill seeks to do is to bring about a system of early election whereby this category of people will vote before the main election day, so that they cannot be disenfranchised as a result of the circumstances they found themselves in life. And also against the backdrop of the fact that the number of turnout over the years has been declining from 43.7% in 2015 to 27.1% in the last election. So if there's early election, at least the voter turnout will improve and also will bring a lot of credence and credibility to our elections by allowing most people to participate. I therefore support the second reading of this bill. Thank you.
You have the floor. 2 minutes, please. Let's restrict to ourselves 2 minutes so that others will speak. After the three, there's Senator Salih Mustafa will round up so that we'll move on.
Thank you very much, Mr. Senate President. My name is Jimo Folorunso Ibrahim. I represent the good people of Ondo South and Ondo States. My own contribution is to bring to the attention of the Senate that exclusion of one is terrible for democracy. What this debate seeks to achieve, and I must thank Senator, distinguished Senator Yar'Adua for bringing this one, is to resolve the lacuna within our electoral process that disenfranchise some of our citizens. We've tried to cover this in the Senate by setting up committee on diaspora and all that, but their legitimate right to vote, their elective democratic right to vote is inalienable, and therefore we must support this. Again, we said Nigeria is a giant of Africa. Giant in what perspective? We are giant in the economy and all that. We should also be giant in democratic process, in ensuring that citizens of Nigeria have their votes captured in any electoral system. And I think that is the significance of this bill, and it cannot be overemphasized. Since you gave me 2 minutes to speak, I will round up by reminding you, Mr. Senate President, to even actually sit this very all-important debate in the jurisprudence of my Lord Justice Holmes in 1678. He said the purpose of what the court will do is not pretentious, is what I mean by law. The law says they must vote. Senate cannot be pretentious about that. Even if Senate decide to be, or INEC decide to be an INEC of prophecy, where they prophesize things, the prophecy of what they will do is the law. And the law is that citizens of Nigeria must vote, and their vote is inalienable, is fundamental, and is the Rubicon of democracy. On this note, I want to give the floor to my other colleagues to make their contribution. This is all important support, not only support. Thank you for filling the lacuna that have been left behind since 1960 through many democratic processes. We can be giant of Africa in our democratic process, and I urge the Senate to consider this as very fundamental. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The Senate President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Garba Musa Maidoki, representing Kebbi South Senatorial District. I rise to support, first of all, to commend Senator Yar'Adua Abdul Aziz for this all-important bill that seeks to give room for everybody to vote in our electoral system. It is our duty to make sure that we have created avenue for every Nigerian. We bend backward so that every Nigerian can have the opportunity to vote. As presently constituted, voting in just one day, accreditation, there is just too many queues that so many other important people feel it is too tedious for them to attend. By enlarging this thing, by enlarging the days for the election and enshrining this early voting, people can vote very early, and those that wish to wait for the last date for them to cast their vote physical, that is also okay. But what we must do as Senate is to open every avenue for every Nigerian so that he can be given the opportunity to vote. Thank you. I support this bill 100%.
Sally, you don't want to speak here? Okay, maybe Deputy Senate leader.
Your Excellency, the Senate President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Saliu Mustafa representing Kwara Central. I also rise to support this bill that we should create or make it possible for the diaspora vote and also early voting for those who carry essential duties on the day of election. In supporting this bill, all has been said, and I think it's a straightforward bill, because if we must talk of democracy that gives everybody the right to certain fundamental provisions, then we must not deny anybody the opportunity to vote if they have come of age. Because one of the greatest crime is to deny somebody, he or she, his right to exercise the franchise to vote for who or she or whatever party they believe in. So in supporting what our brother, distinguished Senator Abdulaziz Yaradua has brought to the fore today, I want to ask every other person here to please give this bill the total support in making sure that we pass this bill as part of the requirements that the INEC will also inculcate in their approach in making sure future elections are carried out without excluding anybody. Thank you very much.
Deputy Senate leader. Sorry, I have to, because already have recognized him, or I would have called you.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. I'm Senator Ashiru, representing the good people of Kwara South. I stand to support the adoption of this bill, but with a caution. And the caution has to do with our history and our level of development. We are all aware of what happened on election day in Nigeria. And we are all aware of all the troubles that go with a one-day election in Nigeria. I start to wonder, can we take that one to so many days of our life? If elections are to be held over a long period of time, is it possible for all our security apparatus, all indices of agencies to be able to control the trouble of election? And I want to say that if this bill will be adopted, we have to do it with caution, and it has to be progressive. One, I don't see a way where we do it the way they are doing it in the United States or in developed climate. I will pray that this thing we are talking about should probably be restricted to those people who are engaged on official duty on election day, and not a generalized open voting. So, Mr. President, while I support the bill, I will want us to be cautious so that we will not run from pie to fire. I rest my case.
Senator Cyril and then Senator Titus will round up so that we can vote.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, my name is Senator Cyril Fachi. I represent the good people of Ekiti State. Mr. President, I want to draw your attention and my other colleagues to paragraph 3 of the lead debate. From my simple calculation, about 2 million, from a simple calculation of the figures shown out by Senator Yaradua, about 2 million people are disenfranchised on election day. This is a very significant number, looking at the usual gap that you normally see between the winner and the runners-up. In view of this, I would like us to take a very resolute decision on including this set of people to vote prior to the election day because of the significant number of people that are engaged. However, the only word of caution I have is that INEC must be ready to take up this task. Thank you very much.
Finally, Senator Titus Zam.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I am Senator Titus Zam. I represent Benue Northwest Senatorial District. Mr. President, I rise to express my sentiments against or reservations against the position canvassed by this bill because, yes, ordinarily, when you look at the face value of this argument that a huge number of our personnel, security personnel, INEC staff, journalists are disenfranchised, but they are not totally disenfranchised. They are carrying out another essential service that adds to the value of the electoral process. So they contribute to it professionally. So bringing them to be on board the voting process, they are bound to be divided loyalty, divided interest. So it has to be approached with caution. When you allow the military, for example, to vote on election day, you are invariably asking politicians to also go to the barracks to campaign. And you can imagine the social and political implication of bringing these essential services into our electoral process. So we need their own service as neutral instruments to give credibility to our electoral process. So I would advise against adding them up to the numbers of those that participate in the election. So I want us to approach this issue with caution because it is a recipe for crisis in the electoral process, and it also affects the integrity of the process, as it were. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, distinguished Senator, for your contributions. You want to speak, Minority Leader? We have already closed taking contributions, but you can, Senator Ekon, let me, my God, wow. See, we have already closed the debate. A lot of senators have contributed, but we'll allow my leader to say what you want to say on your behalf. When we go to the next motion, I will recognize you first because of we don't need to waste much time on just one motion. One bill, sorry. So a round up on their behalf. Luckily enough, okay, just 1 minute. Out of respect for your office.
Okay, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, thank you very much, Mr. President, for this privilege. I actually had wanted, by all means, to make a contribution here, because I believe very sincerely that if all of us are very, very sincere about deepening our democracy, then we must think about what is right for the system. There is no doubt, Mr. President, that we already have some setbacks and misgivings about these elections being clustered around one day and everybody wanting to vote. I imagine, for instance, the person who is a policeman or a security officer who is on election duty definitely cannot vote because usually they don't post them to their stations. And I imagine also that our military men like in other developed democracies, who may be on duty on the day in question also don't have access to voting, and so those kind of persons are disenfranchised. But I think that the most important thing, Mr. President, is that if we can unbundle the voting arrangement, the voting process on election day, it will ease our work. And so I sincerely support this motion, not necessarily because it is in tandem with what happens in other countries. They have a hitch-free early voting in America, and it has value to the citizen. It is support from it. I don't think if we adhere to this principle enunciated here. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much for your contribution, all those who contributed. We'll now with the question. Before then, I don't want to kind of influence the voting, but we have to look at the pros and cons. Anyway, look at the pros and cons. It's a good idea. It's a very good idea, but we need to understand our psyche as Nigerians. When you vote early, you keep the ballot boxes. We do hope that somebody will not go and add more ballot papers into the ballot boxes. This is a problem. It's a psyche, the way we do our things here. That's why whenever we vote, when the voting gets concluded, everybody remains there for the votes to be counted. But if you want to fail, no matter how popular you are, I mean, your people want how popular you could be, allow the vote to be counted maybe 2 hours after the voting has concluded. You will see a different result. So this is the fear. I'm sure this is the fear people are expressing. Different from your own fear, Senator Zam, because what they are talking about is to allow those people like police, DSS to vote. They don't vote now. And sometimes they are taken to other parts of the country. Like those from Benin will be taken to maybe Nasarawa State to go and work there. So they will not be able to vote. So they want them to vote before the election. So it's on this, in this respect, I put the question. Those in favor that the bill now be read second time, please say aye. Those against say nay. The ayes have it. The clerk of the Senate.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to amend the Electoral Act number 13, 2022 to provide for early voting at elections, including criterion for eligibility, procedures at the election, and for related matters 2025 second reading.
A bill for an act to amend the Electoral Act number 13, 2022 to provide for early voting at elections, including criteria for eligibility, procedure at the elections, and for other related matters 2025 second reading taken. The bill is referred to the Committee on Electoral Matters to report within 4 weeks. The Leader of Senate.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very distinguished colleagues. The second order of the day is the second reading of the National Council for Traditional Rulers Establishment Bill 2025, SB 546. Distinguished senators will recall that the bill was read for the first time in this chamber on Tuesday, 8 October 2024. Mr. President, you may wish to invite most distinguished Senator Simon Bako Lalong to move the motion for the bill to be read a second time.
Senator, former Speaker, Plateau State House of Assembly, former Governor of Plateau State, former DG of the President campaign of beloved President and now Senator of the Federal Republic, Senator Simon Bakola, now you have the floor. And former minister, sorry, thank you, leader, for reminding me, former minister. You have the floor to move the motion for your bill to be read the second time.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. And I will also thank my distinguished colleagues for giving me this privilege. Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, Simon Lalong, representing the good people of Plateau South. I rise to move to lead the debate on the National Council for the Traditional Rulers Establishment Bill.
You can go on.
Thank you once again, Mr. President. Mr. President, respected colleagues, please permit me to lead the debate on the general principles on the bill to establish the National Council for Traditional Rulers in Nigeria. This bill seeks to establish the National Council for Traditional Rulers in order to accord formal recognition to as well facilitate the important roles and functions of our traditional rulers. This bill was read for the first time in this chamber on Tuesday, the 8th October 2024. Mr. President, my respected colleagues, you will recall that before the amalgamation of the Northern and Southern Protectorates and the colony of Lagos to form Nigeria in 1914 by the British colonial masters, various areas were a conglomeration of kingdoms, caliphates, chiefdoms, and empires existing through natural indigenous forms of governance. The traditional authorities were very influential because they governed their societies by virtue of their being the custodians of people's culture, tradition, values, morals, and religious beliefs, etc. They serve as vanguards in handling and containing communal conflicts, crises, and insecurities among their diverse citizens. They also brokered and regulated commerce and industry through trade with other kingdoms. The glory of traditional rulers blossomed between the 1910s and the 1960s, where Nigerian traditional rulers were very influential and in charge of native authority administration under the British colonial indirect rule system. They serve as the executive of the national of the council, the legislature, making bylaws, and the judiciary in charge of native authority, police, judges, and prisons. This format continued until the First Republic, 1960 to 1966, with the role of traditional rulers as members of the regional houses of chiefs. The traditional institution was, however, sidelined with General Ironsi's 1966 unitary government, General Gowon's and General Obasanjo's 1967 and 1976 local government reform decrees that stripped traditional rulers of the powers and shared them between federal, states, and local governments. While the 1979 Constitution restored the significance of our traditional institutions to a great extent, the 1999 Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, as amended, relegated their relevance to the background. That's why we're having insecurity everywhere without control today. In summary, while there are no constitutional roles for our traditional rulers, there is also concurrently no law that provides the framework for our traditional rulers to operate despite their importance to the society. It is in this order to fill the current lacuna that I first of all sponsored a Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria 1999 Alteration Bill, SB 532, which was read in this chamber on Thursday, the 24th of September 2024. It is also in furtherance of the above that this bill, the National Council of Traditional Rulers of Nigeria Establishment Bill 2024, seeks to provide framework for the traditional rulers to operate at the federal level and contribute their quota, if they are captured within the Constitution, to national stability and development as they did in 1910s and 1960s. I know a lot of people were not born. Many of us were not born, but we read history and we saw the importance and relevance. Mr. President, my distinguished colleagues, it is my conviction that even in these contemporary times, traditional rulers play a key role in the non-kinetic approach of the efforts by government at all levels to tackle our security challenges because they are ingrained in the fabrics of our societies. In conclusion, I urge you all to support this bill for second reading and eventual passage into law in order to spur better synergy between traditional rulers and government. Thank you, Mr. President.
Distinguished Honorable Senator Ned Manir Nwoko, you have the floor.
Thank
I
you.
call you Honorable because I know you are a former member of the House of Representatives.
I understand.
So you combine two titles, and even Chief Prince, right?
Yes.
Okay, you have the floor. Analyze it.
I understand, Mr. President, and thanks for the opportunity to make my contribution to this. But let me stand by seconding supporting the bill as read by my very good friend, Excellency. Mr. President, do I go on to make my contribution then?
You have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed. Yes, this is a very important bill. I certainly support it wholeheartedly. I've always felt that traditional institutions must have a defined role within the Constitution, and this is what this bill seeks to achieve. I am aware historically that in the 50s, we had a House of Chiefs in Ibadan, and I'm sure there's another one in Kaduna, where they played very important roles in the society. As a matter of fact, Mr. President and my colleagues, I was told that the House of Chiefs in Ibadan and the rest of them played a significant role in discussing and negotiating our independence, what later became Nigeria in 1960. So I was taken aback, actually, when I now found out eventually that they were sidelined. There are no more roles for them. But I know from my own background that traditional institutions all over the country have a lot of role to play. I was brought up in such an environment, and I saw kings holding courts. I saw them, attending to various matters within the communities. Just let me take one instance, the issue of insecurity. In every community in Delta, the kings play a major role. They play roles with the local government chairman in issues on environment, on security. So I believe that this particular council should have a very defined role, especially when it comes to security matters. If every king in every kingdom is made to understand that it is their duty to ensure that there is rule of law and order within their environment, there will be less crisis across the country. Secondly, Mr. President and my colleagues, I think that maybe in course of the deliberations when the matter referred to the committee, to the relevant committee, this council is not just to define a role for them, but there should also be some form of remuneration for them. It's not every king that might be involved in the council. It depends. I don't know the details of the bill.
Your time is off, please.
But there should
You'll
be
be speaking for 3 minutes or 4 minutes. Just 2 seconds to round up. I know you are a prince. This bill is very dear to you. I know that. So please, but you have 2 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. President. Just in summary, the kings should be given very well-defined roles in the country so that they feel a sense of belonging. It's not enough to be called kings without any official responsibilities. They want it. They want to play major roles. So I must commend you, my brother, for bringing.
Your time is off. The Deputy Chief, you have the floor.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
distinguished colleagues, my name remains Senator Peter Onyekachi Nwebonyi with the Golden Crown of Ebonyi Senatorial Zone of Ebonyi State. I rise to support this very important bill seeking inter alia to give statutory recognition and define rules to our traditional institutions across the country. It goes without saying, Mr. President, that our traditional rulers across the country is doing very well in terms of promoting peace and conflict resolution in our localities. But unfortunately, they lack the legal backing to so do, hence the need for this bill. I therefore support this bill in its entirety because this bill will give statutory authentication to the functions and roles of our traditional rulers across the country. I therefore call all my colleagues to back this bill. Thank you.
I know you are also a prince. That's why you are fully in support. Senator Sani, Wasiu.
Thank you, Mr. President. I am Senator Prince Wasiu Eshinokun. I rise to give my total and unalloyed support to this bill. When we cast our minds back, we will know that whatever the current form of government is doing are the roles reserved for the traditional rulers in the past. The new set of the modern day government, democratic, either it is presidential, it is parliamentary, oligarchy, and what have you, they are taking away what the traditional rulers were doing in the past. When you look, if you permit me, sir, to look at my dictionary, Google, you will see that, can I read? What are the rules for emirs in Nigeria before? The emirs control the executive, legislative, and judicial powers of the emirates. Those were before. The kings, as they were called then, also were the political, cultural, economic, and social administrators of their various emirates. Taking all of these powers away from them, leaving them with none, is not only unjust, it is antithetical to social justice. And no matter how infinitesimal roles we want to give them, I think we should give them a sense of belonging. However, there must be ways to preserve their honor, dignity, without being rubbished by the political elites.
Thank you.
That is the.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let me say, Senator Bagola Long, this bill may not be enough. You have to look at constitutional alteration. You need to go to the constitution, make consultation, and then add that up. Otherwise, you are on that. It's okay. It's okay. Well, as a former speaker, I know you know what you are doing. The Deputy Senate Leader.
Mr. President, I just want to throw a question. And the question is very simple. We are in a democratic dispensation. Democracy has its own structure. I'm not very sure that what we are talking about is on the same line with these democratic institutions. As of today, our traditional rulers are well recognized in their local domain. They are well recognized at local government level, and they are well recognized and referred at state levels. Even at the federal level, very constantly, they are called upon to solve either kinetic or non-kinetic problems in Nigeria. I would just want to throw a question that we should be very, very protective of democracy and tenets of democracy. And democracy is about the people, not a section. Democracy is about electoral system, not a choice system that is common with our traditional institutions. I throw that caution so that we should be very careful. We should not be taken away by princes and princesses that are talking. ordinary people should hear their own view too, and we should be listened to. Thank you, Mr. President.
Senator Emmanuel Episagba, then to round off the debate with Senator Saliu Shaibu Afolabi. Emmanuel.
Thank you, Mr. President of the Senate, and my very distinguished colleagues. I rise to support this motion, this bill, a debate for the inclusion of the traditional ruler in the ruling of our affairs. Now, when you look at the whole situation in Nigeria, you will find out that the Obas, let me say in the Southwest, have very, very big role to play in terms of organization of the community. They know where things are happening within the villages. They know where you can arrest situation when it is about to happen. But if they are not given the opportunity to participate in the governance, it will be very difficult for them to exhibit these unique roles. In the past, when the Obas, the Emas, and all other traditional rulers were involved in proper leadership, you find out that the rate of crimes were very low because they can narrate this situation as at when due. They have the assures, those are the soldiers in the Yoruba land that can bring things into correction at a particular time. So with this bill, I strongly support that they should give it the opportunity to go to the next stage so that the traditional rulers can have very unique role to play in the whole system of leadership. Thank you very much.
We now have Senator Salisu Shaibu, then thereafter Senator Yaradua, and then Senator Yaya Abdullahi, and then finally Senator Mohammed Mongunu, in that order.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, Shoaib Afolabi Salisu is my name. I represent the Ogun Central Senatorial District. It is difficult to fault this motion at all, this bill, and I'll give just 3 reasons. Number one, as we speak, in most states of the Federation, there exists Ogun State, as an example, Ogun State Council of Traditional Rulers. I am also aware your state has. Most states of the Federation already have Council of Traditional Rulers. What is missing is the nexus of these traditional rulers to be able to come together at the national level. To further buttress this point, they are also being remunerated. They are part of the first line charge that the local government funds use to pay the traditional rulers in respective domains. In one breath, we are remunerating them. In another breath, we are not giving them any responsibility. So this is the first reason. Second reason, at every time of national crisis, we run to traditional rulers. Whenever there's a crisis in a country, the government finds a way of bringing.
You are protected. You can continue.
The second reason I was mentioning was at time of grave national crisis, we run to traditional rulers on an ad hoc basis. Why don't we have a National Council of Traditional Rulers or something similar to National Council of State in a manner that they can advise government from time to time on issues of importance to our national development? Finally, Mr. President, none of us here, if your traditional ruler calls you, you run back home. None of us here, if you want to start your campaign, you go to the domain of your traditional rulers. Why do we go to them only when we are seeking votes, when we are seeking endorsement? We don't go to them as soon as we are done with the elections. we forget them. So I'm of the strong opinion that we need to have this platform for our traditional rulers to be able to meet at the national level and be able to provide for us invaluable wisdom, insight, and the closeness they enjoy with the local communities. I wholeheartedly support this bill.
Adwa.
Thank you, Mr. President. My distinguished colleagues, I rise to support this bill and to also thank my distinguished elder, Senator Simon Lalong, for bringing this very important bill to recognize and also define rules for our traditional rulers. I just want to buttress what most of my distinguished colleagues have said. One, in terms of the security, if we go to the local governments today, the number of police you find in the local governments are not more than 60. If you go to the wards, down to the wards, you hardly find a policeman or a security Department of State Security Service. You just find maybe one person from the State Security Service running around almost 3 local governments. But if we look at the traditional rulers, they have such an architecture from the district head to ward heads, whereby even if a village constitutes very few houses, you find the presence of our traditional rulers there. So recognizing them and giving them roles.
You have 1 second remaining.
1 minute, sir. Would help in ensuring that they help government, especially on the aspect of security. We know how well respected they are in the society, very close to the masses. And like my brother mentioned here, my distinguished colleague, when we go out for campaigns, our first port of call is the traditional ruler. We go there and seek for his support to talk to the people for us to win the elections. And after the elections, what do we do? So I think
Thank you.
important.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Former leader, Senator Abdullah.
Thank you. I would like to start, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, by first of all paying my tribute to distinguished Senator Governor Lalong for bringing this issue in this session of the Senate. Like Senator Salisu and Yaradua have pointed out very clearly, Mr. President, that the traditional rulers in this country have governance structures that stretch right down to the very heart of the smallest village and individuals that populate this country. Apart from being the people who look after their populations and custodians of our culture and traditions, they also have and play a very, very important role in securing the people of this country. I think there is no state here that does not depend on them on one issue or other when it comes to the issue of conflict resolution or issues that involve popular participation in anything having to do with political, cultural, or social affairs. Mr. President, like Salisu and several others who have contributed to this bill have said, we ourselves, there is none of us here who can say that he has participated and actually started his political campaigns without making nocturnal and open visits to the palaces of these traditional rulers.
And let us also be very, very candid about some of these issues. This democracy we are talking about has its foundation from traditional institutions. It's not true that democracy is totally outside the confines of traditional institutions and management. The source of the democratic culture that we enjoy around the world today, Great Britain, is still ruled, at least nominally, by a traditional ruler. There are so many cultures where democracy has thrived, but where traditional institutions are recognized and given prominence of place. Mr. President, you can remember that in the Ninth Senate, we had a meeting of all the traditional rulers in this country, and they made a nomination and wrote a memo to the National Assembly regarding a place for them in the Nigerian Constitution. And that was done. We went to the thing, and it came back to this chamber. And it is at this point, or in the House of Representatives, that that particular amendment failed to sail through from the National Assembly. Therefore, while congratulating Senator Lolong for this very important bill that he had brought, I think it's also important to remind him that this issue has to be taken care of in another exercise of constitutional amendment, so we'll try to find a place for that institution, and also to ask him to use his very, very enormous weight and political clout to ensure that when the issue finally comes before this chamber, we gather enough votes to allow it to sail through as a constitutional amendment. I thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. May I invite the distinguished Senator Muhammad Mongodo?
Mr. President, distinguished senators, my name is Mohamed Tahir Monguno. I represent Borno North Senatorial District. Mr. President, this bill is res ipsa locutor. It speaks for itself. What this bill merely seeks to achieve is to insulate the traditional rulers from the whims and caprices of executive fiat, whereby the executive will just wake up one day and decide not to recognize this Council of Traditional Rulers. So it's merely seeking to insulate them from the whims and caprices of executive fiat and further give them the legal backing so that they can only not back, but they can bite in discharge of their functions, so that they cannot be reduced to a toothless bulldog that can bark but cannot bite. So this bill merely seeks to give legal backing for something that already exists at the national level. For example, I know the Shogo of Borno, who is my traditional ruler, represents my state in the Council of Traditional Rulers, and I know the Emir of Ilorin represents Kwara State in the National Council of Traditional Rulers. I don't know of Ikiti, but I know of Kwara, of Kano, though in Kano there is controversy now, but I know the Emir of Kano, whichever one, Emir of Kano, whichever one that will represent Kano in the National Council of Traditional Rulers. Thank you. I support the second reading of this bill.
A bill to...
We have two people now. We still have two people.
Is it coming as a bill or is coming as a motion? So debate for the second. Well, I think the issue is very clear. If there is nobody here that will be opposed to this, otherwise you won't go home. and then you will not be received by your traditional ruler. I think it's also important that we give them this authority for them to be able to contribute to the security of their domains. Just like we have to reinforce the governors to really act the part of chief security officers of their various states. So if we complement this with a proper recognition of our traditional institution, my opinion is that the security of the nation will be more assured. So let me recognize the senior Senator Olari to round up the debate.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, distinguished colleagues. Well, just to add one small impetus to the further discussion people have given in support of this bill. You know, at the local government level, as a former chairman of local government in my state for 7 years, the institution of the traditional life is well entrenched at local government level, and they have headship at each local government. I think ditto for all the states. I think that is why the mover of this bill, a former governor, is open that the missing link is at the national level. And if you look at the trend now, the current traditional rulers are very, very expressive, well-lettered professionals. So we need people like that at the national level in an organized legal body so that they can be a source of communication between the national and their subject at home. I think it's going to add a lot of good to the governance at the national level if you have a formal body for them in Nigeria. It will assist us a lot. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for your contribution. Distinguished colleagues, is there anybody that is opposed to this bill going for second reading?
Yes.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Senate President, my very distinguished colleague. Actually, it's not that the traditional rulers are not given roles to play. Historically and trajectorily, you remember before 1648, or the key of the Westphalia Act, the Peace of Westphalia, where the state got authority, who was in charge? Traditional rulers. From the Pope, Your Excellency, Mr. Senate President, you are even aware of the Civil War in England. What led to the Civil War where tens of millions of people were killed? Conflict of authority between the Pope and the traditional rulers. The King of Scotland said there's nobody to exercise authority over the state of Scotland except himself. But this popular authority of the kings were lost in 1648 when we have the sovereignty of the Westphalia Act. It is then that Nigeria start to copy from that historical trajectory and be cautious of the role of traditional rulers. The draconian way of laws being made, and the multiplicity and multifarious duplication of traditional institutions, again, is too porous, so that laws cannot guide them. Mr. Senate President, I will conclude by saying that even in my jurisdiction, we have almost 71 ologias and about 50 obas in a small town. How do you now dedicate and disseminate power to them? Why this is a very fantastic adventure of a bill brought by our learned senator, from Plateau. We need to be on cautious side. You give traditional ruler too much authority, they overtake the states. And it is also the case that traditional rulers are not even interested in respecting simple directive from the state authority. For example, don't travel out of your state jurisdiction without permission from you have been governor, Your Excellency, for several years, almost a decade. You know what you went through. You will make a simple law for traditional rulers to take permission so that you can be accountable for whatever happened to them when they travel outside the state jurisdiction. They refuse to obey you. And by the time you complain, they ask you to lean down and talk to them and prostrate. These are not in tandem with contemporary behavior of the modern times. Why we don't completely say, Mr. Senate President, with due respect to your person and distinguished senator, I stand to say very clearly that we should be on the cautious side, define it clearly without any ambiguity if any rule is to be given to them. Lastly, how do we send revenue? The fiscal policy or the federalism require a lot of details. And how do you cross the I's and dot the T's? The state still responsible for the funding of traditional institutions. Are we saying the federal government should disburse money to them directly? We witness all of these are happening, but I don't want to refer Your Excellency to conflicting conflicts or converging complexities around the stillment of functions and roles of traditional ruler. But this Senate, this very brilliant Senate, very intelligent Senate, headed by a common Senate President, should be conscious in ensuring that the law, the statements, cover all this area of conflict.
There's a point of order on your allusion to 1648.
Yes, 1648.
Mr. President, point
That's
of order.
a
Order
piece.
52.
Just, I'm sorry, I still have the
1648.
Yes,
Order
1648.
52.
Piece of Westphalia. Where the Senate President has
So
been
point of order.
Thank you.
1648.
Thank you, Mr. President. Order 52, 3, 4. A senator must confine his observations to the subjects under discussion and may not introduce matter irrelevant thereto. Mr. President, I want to draw the attention of my distinguished colleagues that what he's talking about or referring to our traditional rulers, what he's saying they are doing, or what is alluding to their behavior or to their act is not correct. And this bill is talking about giving them prominence or giving them relevance in the scheme of things in our country. But he has gone off track, saying you have to prostrate. In my own jurisdiction, we don't prostrate for traditional rulers. We don't do that. We take them as the custodian of our tradition, or as the custodian of our culture. And any society without history, you cannot change history. So I'm saying now,
Distinguished Deputy Senate President, are you from Nigeria?
I'm from Nigeria.
And you say you don't prostrate for your emirs?
It's against our we bow. We pay, yes, we respect them. But there are good things. There are very, very good things about our traditional institution. And it's bringing the laws or the traditions of other of foreign jurisdiction to our country. What he's talking about is about England, not about Nigeria. So he has gone off track.
No, point of correction, sir.
So we want relevance for our traditional institution in this country. So that's why we're supporting this bill.
Well, your point of order is noted. Let me say that we can sit down to discuss the pros and cons. But what we should do at this stage of this bill is to discuss the general principles of the bill. We go into the nitty-gritty of how we respect them, whether we should pay obeisance by prostrating or by bowing or by kneeling. But I think one of the problems why security broke down in Nigeria totally is the lack of recognition of the traditional institution in the Constitution of 1999 as amended. And I'm sure even the distinguished Senator Lalong knows that this will pass this chamber and pass the other chamber and go to the state houses or assemblies. Because outside the public hearing, it will require constitutional amendment to be able to effect this. So we are just starting a long haul. And all these issues will be discussed, canvassed, and by various arms of government at the state level, at the public hearing and all that before we can bring it into reality. But I think it's better we start by pointing out that we need to give stronger roles to our traditional rulers and strong recognition for them. I'm just aligning myself. But let me put the question. Those in support that this bill be read a second time, say aye. Those against say nay.
Nay.
The ayes have it. Therefore, I want to invite the clerk of the Senate to proceed to read the bill. Second time.
Mr. President, distinguished senators, a bill for an act to establish the National Council for Traditional Rulers in order to accord formal recognition and as well facilitate their roles and functions, and for other related matters 2025, second reading.
Distinguished colleagues, a bill for an act to establish the National Council for Traditional Rulers in order to accord formal recognition as well as facilitate their roles and functions, and for other related matters 2025, second reading taken. Distinguished colleagues, a bill for an act to establish the National Council for Traditional Rulers in order to accord formal recognition as well as facilitate their roles and functions, and for other related matters, second reading taken and committed to the Committee on Establishment and Public Service Matters to report to the Senate in 6 weeks. So let me thank the distinguished Senator Lalong for sponsoring this bill, and especially thank the Deputy Senate President for his role in mediating and meandering through the various contributions of our colleagues, and further thank our colleagues for their contributions, and all that when eventually the bill goes for public hearing, you should also make yourselves available to contribute your views, so that at the end we may end up with a very clear and concise legislation that will spell out the roles and functions of traditional institutions in the affairs of governance in Nigeria to avoid conflicts between the democratically elected governments and the traditional institutions that lie forever and exist beyond the various traditional leaderships in almost all parts of the country. As Senator Jim Ibrahim pointed out, the bill will also have to eliminate multiplicity, where, for instance, you have over 70-something traditional rulers in a state with just 18 local governments. They all cannot belong to one council. Because if we have 774 local governments in the country, local government has over 10 traditional institutions of equal standing, it simply means you may end up with over 7,000 people in a room. The cacophony of voices may tend to drown national discourse and elicit more confusion in governance than would have been required. So we will have to streamline the membership of the National Council of Traditional Rulers when eventually it comes to clause-by-clause considerations. So I thank all my colleagues for this. The Senate. Looking at the mood of the Senate, you may wish to speak.
Well, Mr. President, very distinguished colleagues, I always love to consider the mood of the Senate, especially when I know our colleagues are under tremendous pressure to be able to hold their committee slated or scheduled committee meetings and other legislative activities that they're engaging in. In view of that, Mr. President and distinguished colleagues, may I most respectfully move that we step down the other items on the other paper today to another legislative day to enable us adjourn. If this motion survives, Mr. President, then the second leg of my motion will be that the Senate do adjourn Tuesday, the 18th day of March 2025 at 11 a.m. I so move, Mr. President.
The minority leader.
Mr. President, distinguished colleagues, I support the two concurrent motions moved by the leader of the Senate. I so second.
Distinguished colleagues, just before I put the question, in my absence while I was at another function, the Deputy Senate President was presiding, and by the time I heard on the radio that this August Assembly had passed a vote of confidence on its leadership, and particularly the Senate President, I said it would not be correct if I come and pretend like the ostrich, putting his head under his wings and pretending that it was dark. I needed to let you know that I deeply, deeply appreciate the vote of confidence was on my leadership. And this is coming almost twice in the last 6 weeks. In 2 weeks? The last 2 weeks. It's good to err on the part of surplusage. It's important for the public to know that my colleagues are together. The Senate is one and bonded together by destiny and by God Almighty through elections. The 10th Senate is together, united in purpose. It's also important for the public to know that whatever decision we arrive at here is unanimous. And I recall the last decision we took, and which concerned one of our sisters here, the senior Senator Natasha Bochuduagan. I'm also aware that when she left the chambers, she went to Brekete Radio, and she went to Arise Television, and she distorted the facts. I'm aware further that she has now externalized the matter by attempting to embarrass the Federal Republic of Nigeria by going to give a narrative at the IPU UN event, totally different from what occurred in the Senate. But I want to thank our Right Honorable Member, Kafilat, right? That's her name, Kafilat Okwara, who had to give a press conference in New York to caution the international press not to vilify Nigeria, but to note that the facts presented by her were totally out of tune with what occurred in the Nigerian parliament, and that we have our own internal mechanisms of resolving issues in Nigeria